Welcome to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL, 950 AM, 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. And you can also find us at our parish website and your favorite podcast platform. By the way, our parish website is ST for St. Anthony Alston.org. That's STAnthonyAlston.org. So anyway, we're looking at these words, and this is from a detailed examination of conscience. And yesterday, I talked about this one particular point. Now, there's probably, I don't know, I'd be surprised if there wasn't more than 50 listed here. So obviously we're not going to get anywhere near close to them all. But yesterday I addressed refuse to accept what God revealed as true or what the Catholic Church proposes for belief. So it is listing this as a sin, but it doesn't really give a solution. So what it basically seems to come out to is, oh, I refuse to believe this, that's a sin, so now I have to believe this. Well, okay. But you want to investigate what is the problem with what you refuse to believe, why you refuse to believe it. Is it actually Catholic teaching in the first place? And kind of looking at that. And that begins with the virtue, which is the important virtue in our faith, which is humility. So it's coming out to understand an expression that I used last week, but I love to use. I first learned in the Navy. The chief would say something that we have to get done, and someone would turn around and say, well, why do we have to do this? And why do we have to follow, why we have to follow what the chief says? And our response was always, because he is the chief and you are not. And I use that all the time. So last week I used it with responding to Cardinal Raymond Burke's letter. And I said, one of the reasons why we want to look at this is because he's a cardinal and I am not. So kind of looking at that, I'm not saying I did, but I'm just saying in general, even if I disagree or agree with certain things that anyone does, I always have to come back with that first spot because he is who he is, outranking me, and therefore I need to at least take serious consideration of this. So we talked about yesterday about refuse to accept what God has revealed as true and what the church proposes for belief. And we have to understand that if we refuse to believe, we have to make sure that what we refuse to believe is in fact church teaching. Now, one of the major issues that is really, really badly taught by some of these self-appointed apologists and all these people on some of these forums that are teaching people about the faith and they're getting lost is on the virtue of chastity. So, for example, this writer from New England who runs his own magazine, he wrote how happy he was that people with same-sex attraction were practicing chastity. Oh, okay, wonderful. But why aren't you happy that all Catholics are called to practice chastity and in fact are called, and many are, and hopefully all, are living the virtue of chastity? Why aren't you addressing that? And this is a classic example, because what's the message that comes out to that? If someone is living with same-sex attraction, they have to practice chastity. No. If someone is Catholic, they have to practice chastity. And that is not emphasized to the same degree. So one of the reasons why I bring that up, because in that area, that's one of the greatest misunderstandings that comes out of these self-appointed apologists and everything else. They're teaching things that are not fully correct. So they focus on that. You'll hear someone say, well, you know what? If you have same-sex attraction, you have to spend your life in celibacy. Okay, what does the church teach about that? Because that's not what it teaches. What it actually teaches, number one, is not celibacy, but chastity. There is a big difference between the two. And celibacy is a promise not to get married. Chastity is a promise to live according to the teachings of the church on how we experience our interpersonal relationships. And one of the things that the church teaches is that in order to live a chaste life, someone needs a good, solid, Christ-centered friendships. And those are for those of same and opposite sex friendships. It says they're right there in church teaching. People don't bring that out. So if you turn around and say someone says, well, I refuse to believe what the church teaches because it says that my brother or sister or uncle or cousin or whatever has same-sex attraction, so they have to live as celibates the rest of their lives. Where does it say that? Which it does essentially say that, but what it actually says is have to live chastity. But it says that about all Catholics. So where is the problem there? Do you understand? And that's where you begin. So people may refuse what they believe is Catholic teaching and come to find out it's not Catholic teaching. We're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. You're listening to the voice of St. Anthony Parish in Alston. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. And don't forget our website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. And you can also hear us at our parish website, stanthonyalston.org. That's stanthonyalston.org. And don't forget, you can hear us on your favorite podcast platform. So anyway, we're talking about this this one detail, this very detailed examination of conscience. And I always say I really don't like these because I think they're too focused on the negative. They're not enough focus. There's one line here. Have you taken time to pray? It's actually phrased somewhat differently. Have you set aside each day, set time aside each day for personal prayer to God? Well, you know how much I'm focused on prayer, but prayer is essential. And you know what it doesn't talk about here now that I think about it, which is another aspect? It doesn't talk about the other aspect, which is doing good spiritual reading and trying to deepen your faith that way. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, we want to get back to this one point that, and I could go all week on this, but I won't. And that is refuse to accept what the God has revealed as true or what the Catholic Church proposes for belief. Well, again, so I've said... are you refusing to believe something, believing that this is what the church teaches, and the church doesn't teach that? And so the first thing is, if you refuse to believe something the church teaches, make sure that what you're refusing to believe is what the church teaches. And then investigate it more deeply. And that's important. Don't just listen to someone on Twitter or listen to someone on Reddit or some of these other Facebook or whatever. Just listen to, deepen your faith. Speak to someone. And if you hear something at a homily that you disagree with, don't feel, including my own, don't feel you should just accept it. Go talk to the priest. And I'll tell you, I practice what I preach. I was at Franciscan University at Steubenville, and there was a very well-known deacon who preached this whole thing about sin and everything else, and he didn't bring up prayer. And I spoke to him afterwards. I said, wait a minute, you need to also bring up prayer. I mean, yeah, you're right. That's true. Okay. But do you hear what I'm saying? Is I will do it, and I'm telling you, if you listen to one of my homilies, you disagree with it, you can come talk to me about it. Because the idea is to deepen our spiritual faith. Don't just turn around and say, this is what the priest says, I have to accept it. Not necessarily. You want to talk to it because that's how you learn. That's how people learn. And if you don't do that, then there's no learning process going on. So I've done it. I believe I teach that and I do that. And so the same thing with with you. So if you're refusing to believe something the church teaches, you want to make sure that you're refusing to believe what the church actually teaches. Someone once said to me, I was at a Christmas party. I like to bring this up every so often. And I was at a Christmas party a long time ago. This is well over 30 years. It shows you how much I love to bring it up. And someone walked in to the party and found out that I was there. And at the time I was in the seminary. That's how I know it's over 30 years. And I was in the seminary, and the person said, I'm not walking into a Catholic church until they ordain women. And I do believe I said, or at least wanted to say, but I said something in effect, Merry Christmas to you too. Because it was a Christmas party. But the other question is, does anyone really understand what the role of women in the church is? And we were talking this at this meeting we have on Tuesday nights, which you're welcome to come to at 7:00 p.m. Does anyone really want to understand what the role of women in the church is? Does anyone understand why the church does not ordain women, and why if a woman is ordained, it's a step down, not a step up? Very important points so if you're against the church because we don't ordain women, you may want to study why, and you'll be very surprised to find out. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.